Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Dear students, Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to the lecture 18 part 2 of the Programming Fundamentals course. Today we are going to see how we can use loops to display different types of patterns. They really enhances your analytical skills and your thinking ability. So with that, let us go to the objectives of today's lecture. Uh, we are going to use loops. More particularly, we are going to use for loop to display different patterns. Remember that we have already covered the theoretical part. So in these types of lecture, we are going to see how we can um, solve a real world problem. So these lectures are practical in nature. So with that, let me show you what will be the final output of our program. So this is what our program should display us: 1 3 3 3 5 5 5 5 5, and then this is one pattern. And after displaying this pattern, these odd numbers, in this type of pattern we are going to display this static with like this pattern. Like we are going to first display static and then three statics and then 5 and 7 and 9. So with that, I'm going to close this program and I'm going to open code block and create a new project. Make sure that console application is selected. Select C++. So I'm going to say displaying patterns. So let me open this project. So you already know for loop. So once again we are going to use for loop, and I'm going to use a local I variable, initialize it to 1. Then I'm going to say I is less than or equal to 10. You can follow with me. I is plus equals 2, and I'll tell you why we use increment I by 2. We are going to use inner for loop, and then I'm going to say j equals 1, j is less than equal to I, j plus plus, and then we are going to just display the value of I and then some space, and here if we get out of the inner loop, we should go to the next line. So let me compile and run this program. So you can see that the first print pattern has been printed. It's your assignment to dig out, to think about how this pattern is displayed. So let me show it to you once again. So you have to understand that how this pattern is displayed on the screen. It's very simple. We have already discussed loops for so many times. So for the second pattern, I'm going to declare another variable k equals 16, and then I'm going to say times equals 1, and then I'm going to say and I equals 0, I is less than 5, I plus plus, and then once again we are going to use a nested for loop, and all these variables I and j are local to these loops. So j equals 0, j is less than equal to k, j plus plus, and then we are first going to display a space, and then after the space is displayed for let's say initially it will be displayed for k is equal to 16 times. Then what we can do, we can subtract 4 from the k, and then once again I'm going to use a for loop, initialize I with 0, and I is less than times I plus plus, and then we are going to display a static, with the space, and then we are going to say cout handle, and yes, we are going to increase the number of times that static is displayed every time we move to the next line. So how? By, because by 2, so we were displaying odd number of statics. So with that, let me compile and run this program, and now you can see that that same pattern has been displayed. So let me uh, revise what we have done. So we were, the objective was to display different patterns. So using using nested loop, for loop, to display patterns. Okay, so first what we did, we use these two for loop, the outer for loop, the inner for loop. So the inner for loop is nested in the outer for loop. Remember, this I is visible to this for loop. It is not visible outside of this program. And this nested loop can also access this I, but remember, the variable used in the nested loop is not visible to the outer for loop. So we initialize I with 1, I is less than 10, yes, it's true. So we enter into the body of the nested for loop, and then we initialize j with 1, j is less than 10, and I, which initially is true, so we displayed I, which is 1. So that is what we wanted. So you can see 1 is displayed over here, and then what happens, we display a space and then increment j. So this time the condition is false, so we move to the outer for loop and increment I with 2, so I becomes 3. Yes, 3 is still less than 10, and then we move on, and this pattern is displayed. Okay, for the next pattern, we first initialize k with 16. Why 16? Because we were having 16 number of spaces initially, and then times 1. Why 1? Because every time we first we display static 1 times, then 3 times, 5 times, 7 times, and 9 times. So every time we are going to increase the number of times by 2, because we are displaying odd number of statics, and we are going to decrease k by 4 because we are decreasing the number of spaces. And you can then like figure out how this pattern is displayed by running this program. So with that, I'm going to stop here. I'll see you in the next lecture.